Fact or fiction, Gunnar Stockton is an upgrade from Carson Beck. That's what we're going to talk about in today's video because it's the offseason and everyone loves talking about the quarterbacks, right? Georgia fans are constantly talking about the quarterbacks. This guy can get it done. This guy can't. Yada, yada, yada. Carson Beck left Athens without a national championship. Gunnar Stockton has a chance to reach the pinnacle of the sport and lead Georgia to a national championship. But are Georgia fans, or not Georgia fans, is the Georgia team and the Georgia program better with Gunnar Stockton? That's what we're going to dive into. My first, instant reaction take is that I don't think Gunnar Stockton is going to be as good as Carson Beck was in 2023, but I think Gunnar Stockton in 2025 will play better than Carson Beck did in 2024. And that should make sense to you because Carson Beck had those weapons in 2023. Gunnar Stockton, he's got more skill players or will have more skill players around him than Carson Beck did last year. But Carson Beck in 2023, when he had Brock Bowers, Ladd McConkey, he was a different guy. He was playing with confidence. He was letting it rip. He was trusting his receivers. And I'm not sure he trusted many of his receivers this past year. And I totally get it. He didn't have a run game, really helping him out all year long. The offensive line was inconsistent. He had receivers dropping passes left and right. And he didn't have that safety valve. He didn't have the greatest tight end in college football history to throw the ball to. And he didn't have Ladd McConkey, who tore it up for the Chargers this past year. Those guys were elite. He didn't have anyone elite to throw to. Gunnar Stockton might. Zachariah Branch and Noah Thomas those are dogs. Those are difference makers. Those are game changers. But when you look at the two quarterbacks, they're different, right? Carson Beck is more of a pocket passer with some mobility, whereas Gunnar Stockton needs to use his legs. That's part of why he is special. That's why he was, pursued heavily by Georgia. He can rip it, as we saw against Notre Dame. And to be honest, I thought Gunnar Stockton played as well as you could have asked him to against Notre Dame, right? He didn't have a great offensive line helping him. He had the guys dropping passes the same way Carson Beck had them. And he didn't have that immediate elite safety valve. No run game, no offensive line really helping him out. I mean, they got pushed around. They got bullied. And he didn't have help on the outside. But when you watch him play and watch him throw the football, he's got it. He has terrific arm talent. Now, the windup is a little different from Carson Beck, right? Carson Beck's release, is a little cleaner. He gets the ball out a little quicker, and it looks a little more natural, whereas I think Gunnar Stockton takes him a little longer, to kind of wind up. But man, when he lets that ball go, it is zipping out of his hands. Now, he can put some touch on the ball too, and he throws a great deep ball. I mean, he should have thrown a touchdown pass to Dylan Bell, who dropped it down the field. That was one of the best throws I saw anyone make for Georgia all season long between Carson and Gunnar, was that deep ball to Dylan Bell that was dropped. He had a big one to Arian Smith down the sideline against Notre Dame that Smith was able to haul in. And I remember watching and thinking, he can't move. He can't use his legs. He can't run around because, he's being chased play after play after play. There's not a whole lot of protection helping him out. But if Mike Bobo or whoever the play caller is next year, if they can find ways to get him running the football, using his legs, maybe some more zone reads, RPOs, they got to do something because Gunnar Stockton at his best is when he's moving around and throwing the football and making plays outside of the pocket. I still think he's got a little Johnny Manziel to him where he can be creative. He can turn a play that looks like it could be disaster into a big play or something special. He's got that mobility. That gamer mentality, that X factor that you look for in a quarterback that's hard to teach, those instincts. Gunnar has those, and I think that we're going to see a lot of that next year. Now, the question I have is, they both could come out into the draft next year. Gunnar Stockton has a big year. He could come back, but he could also leave, and I think Carson Beck is out of eligibility after this year. If you're an NFL GM, there's obviously more tape on Carson Beck than Gunnar Stockton. But it'll be interesting to see who gets picked first in next year's NFL draft if they're both coming out. Who's the better NFL prospect? Who's going to have the better college football season next year? I think Carson Beck will be a little better at Miami because I just think the system that they have is very quarterback friendly, and I don't think there's a whole lot that he has to do compared to being the quarterback at Georgia. And we'll see. I don't know all the weapons that he's got at Miami, but I mean, you could make the case already that he may have better weapons at Miami this upcoming season than he did last year. Not in 2023, but I mean, could you imagine Gunnar Stockton with Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers, Zach Branch, Noah Thomas? That could be something special. But Gunnar still needs a run game, and he needs guys to step up on the offensive line. But he's got the talent. And I just remember watching the Sugar Bowl from the press box saying, man, someone's got to help this kid out. He is playing like a warrior. And not only did he do it, against Notre Dame in a losing effort, wasn't Gunnar Stockton's fault. You could point the blame at several other people and several other coaches before you get to Gunnar Stockton as the reason they lost to Notre Dame. But he is one of the biggest reasons why they won the SEC championship against Texas, right? He is a warrior. And I'm not saying Carson Beck wasn't, because Carson Beck had some massive, massive wins. But, his legacy, I think, got tarnished a little bit, not because he left, that's one reason, but just how he played against Florida and Texas, two of the biggest games of the season, in the middle of the season. Dude's turning the ball over left and right. And, we criticized him for it, rightfully so. I mean, he played worse than awful at times last year, but he also played really, really well. I don't think Georgia beats Georgia Tech in 8 overtimes if Gunnar Stockton is the quarterback. Maybe. My guess is no. Carson Beck and Dan Jackson, those are the two guys who I thought, other people too, Small Munden, C.J. Allen, those guys really stepped up towards the end. But Carson Beck is the biggest reason why Georgia didn't have a completely embarrassing loss to Georgia Tech. That would have been one of the worst losses in years, possibly of all time. But Carson Beck stepped up when he needed to, and he played terrific. He played terrific against Tennessee. He was great against Tennessee. So he finished the season well, but he played losing football against Texas, Florida, Texas again. And he made, mistakes in games throughout the season too. But Carson Beck's low was pretty low last year. And I think it rubbed Georgia fans the wrong way because, number one, if you turn over the football, that's not cool, right? Not cool at all. It can't happen. But the way he played in 2023, a lot of people thought he might take another step forward, be this Heisman Trophy candidate, lead Georgia to a national championship. And again, this past season, the offensive struggles, if I can say the word, wasn't all on Carson. He played, again, really bad at times, but the drops, the inconsistent offensive line play, the lack of elite game changers, the lack of a consistent run game, there were a lot of factors why Georgia's offense was at times putrid last year, especially in the first half. And I think if, with a full offseason of Gunnar being the guy, drawing up a game plan and a scheme over these next 9 months, getting him comfortable with a new plan, because it doesn't have to be the same scheme. It doesn't have to be the same offense as it was last year or the year before that. In fact, it shouldn't be. These are different quarterbacks. They've got a different skill set and different strengths. And I think we should see a different Georgia offense next year with Gunnar compared to Carson Beck. And I do think that, Georgia fans are probably a little too hard on Carson Beck. When we look at the grand total of his career, I hope Georgia fans remember how good he was, thanks to Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey and, Kendall Milton, Dejan Edwards. He had better players around him, but he was really good too. Took a step backwards last year, but so did just about everywhere on the offense. But now we're looking forward, and I still think it's up for debate if Gunnar Stockton is the better option. I think so. But if you have an argument for Carson Beck, I'll listen to it. I'll listen to that case because he did look like a legitimate NFL quarterback many times, especially in 2023. And he still did some at times in 2024. He's made NFL throws, and I think Gunnar Stockton can make NFL throws too. And he's got more skilled players around him than Carson Beck did last year. So he's got to use that. If they can, find some more running backs with, Nate Frazier to help out, whether it's Chauncey Bowens, Dwight Phillips, Roderick Robinson, Branson Robinson, if they can stay healthy, they need more guys to help him. But if Georgia can establish a run game and, build an offensive line that can, have some chemistry and some continuity, I think Gunnar Stockton should have a tremendous season next year. So I think Gunnar could end up being better than Carson Beck, but I'm not sure we're going to see Gunnar Stockton be as good as Carson Beck was in 2023. So I think he'll be between that, which might be good enough for them to win a national championship. They still need to play well defensively. They still need to win big games against big opponents at home. But this will be year 4 for Gunnar Stockton. He's got the arm. He's got the mobility. He's got the tools. He's not the biggest guy, but he can run. He can sling it. He's smart. He's effective. And if he gets more help around him than he did against Notre Dame, different team, different players, I get all that. But if he can get more help in 2024, and they can find a way to protect him a little better than they did at the end of last season, there's no reason, even with Mike Bobo as a play caller, because that's going to be the first comment on this video. Well, it's not going to happen with Mike Bobo, blah, blah, blah. He's the worst, yada, yada, yada. Mike has a big opportunity in front of him. And I know I say that every year, but again, the offense this past year wasn't all on Mike Bobo. Could the scheme have been better? Could they have game planned a little better and been more effective in the first half, which a lot of that is on coaching? Absolutely. But Mike Bobo wasn't missing blocks and dropping passes. But that's all I'm going to say on that. We can talk more about that the rest of the season. But I want to hear what you have to say. Who do you think is the better quarterback? And do you think Gunnar Stockton will be better or have a better season than Carson Beck did in either 23 or 24? Let me know in the comment section below. Fun off-season video talking about the quarterbacks. I'm not sure there is a wrong answer. I think Gunnar Stockton has a chance to have a fantastic season and possibly be better than Carson Beck at the end of the day. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Really appreciate y'all watching, and I'll see you over on the website.